Hello everyone and welcome back. This is Veteran Mountain Man and I am here for your Prepared Monday. And today I want to talk about a piece of equipment that I highly recommend, and there's several variants that you can get. And the reason for me talking about this piece of equipment is because I was actually looking at buying a new one this week. And that is a meat grinder. For those of you who are getting into preparing and wanting to better manage your food sources and better be able to control how your food is prepared so that you can prep everything and have a longer substantial food supply in an emergency situation, a meat grinder actually is a very important tool. And the reason being is you can grind meat. And grinding meat comes in several different forms. First is grinding fresh caught game or fish. And what I mean by this is literally making ground meat from these caught fish or killed animals. And you do that simply by, filleting out your fish and grinding up the boneless meat and using it as ground fish. For your other stuff, you'll have to, butcher the animal, of course, and that means you'll have to cut it into pieces, and you'll have to then grind up the pieces. And it's actually fairly simple to operate many of these grinders. I'm looking personally at one that's a hand crank model. I don't prefer to use the electric models. They tend to either be too underpowered, too overpowered, or too expensive. The hand crank models, while they require a bit of muscle power, usually are very controlled and very easy to use in your kitchen and not very difficult to clean because they're fairly simple mechanisms. I mean, you got a couple of grinding plates, usually a screw, and maybe a, pressure latch at the top that presses the meat down into the screw mechanism. So they're fairly easy to clean. And one of the big reasons for having them is especially when you start talking about bringing in game. So let's talk a deer. A deer is somewhere around 60 to 100 pounds of meat when dressed out in a lot of cases. Once it's finally butchered and you've removed all the fat and all the organ meat, you've got about 100 to 200 pounds of meat, depending upon the size of the deer. And what are you going to do with that? Well, you can wrap it and leave it in giant chunks, but then you've got to cook large portions of meat with every meal. One of the things you can do is you can cut it down into smaller pieces and use it in stews and such, but there's only so much stew I've found that I can stomach. So an additional alternative is grinding it up into ground meat products. And this also has a benefit of allowing you to do things like, say, shepherd's pies or meat pies or sausages or even burgers or things of that nature. And you can do them even without fresh game. You can go into a grocery store, and a lot of times in a grocery store they'll have like sales on picnic roasts. Those are pork roasts, pork butt roasts or pork shoulder roasts. You can get that and grind that into sausage. And where a sausage might be, $4, $5, $6 a pound, that pork butt is like $2 a pound. And if you grind it up, it's the exact same thing. All you have to do is add a bit of spice to it, and it costs a bit of time. Now, that being said, if you're going to grind linked sausages, you will need to get casings, and you're mostly going to have to get those from butcher shops. And there are still butcher shops in the United States. I mean, I was just over at Ponderosa Provisions here in Oregon the other day. They're a great little butcher shop on Tualatin Valley Highway, and I was looking at what they call their bacon bomb, and it's actually a pretty tasty little treat. If you've never seen one, you might want to go look on the internet and see if you can find one. It's basically sausage stuffed with bacon and then wrapped in bacon, and you roast it, and it's fairly good. Anyhow, the grinder will allow you to process your game without needing a butcher shop, except for making stuff such as linked sausages, and in which case you need to learn how to prepare your own casings in the event of a survival issue. Now, realistically, you're probably never going to use that knowledge to make your own casings, so it's not a problem to get casings from the butcher shop. But it is a good idea to grind your own meat. I mean, even if it's just for, your normal lifestyle, it is easier to freeze a picnic roast whole, and it stores for longer frozen than ground sausage does. And so if you buy, say, 4 picnic roasts while they're on sale, well, that's 20, 30 pounds of meat that can be ground up into sausage. And that can last you and your family pretty much the entire year if your family's not very large and you're careful with your portionings and your quantities. So definitely a sausage grinder or a meat grinder is a good investment for the prepared home. Now, with that, you'll want to look at something such as a vacuum sealer or things of that nature for the storage of your meats for freezing, as well as the storage of your sausage or ground meat for after you've processed it. Another thing you'll want to do is look at actual recipes for the spice mixtures for these things so that you can have the spices on hand. But this will definitely give you some diversity in your meal planning should a survival or an emergency preparedness situation arise. Well, thank you all again for joining me. Remember, if you're on YouTube, to like and subscribe. If you're on VidMe, please upvote and follow. If you're catching this on Minds, feel free to subscribe and leave a comment, as well as an upvote and maybe a remind. If you want to leave a comment and start a discussion with me about this topic or any other topic, feel free to do so at Minds or at Patreon. Thank you all, and have yourselves a great day.